Black Hawk. We just heard the chief talking about how it's essentially the Swiss Army knife for CBP air and marine operations.
We can chase down to whatever comes across.
We scared the smugglers. They have no idea that we're there.
Hi there, Allie Bradley.
Ma'am, how you
Good to
doing?
meet you. An interdiction scenario that played out, that went pretty viral, what you guys call an engine shootout. Tell me what happened in that incident.
The search and rescue is all of our responsibility. If we chase a jet ski, the first thing the smuggler is going to do is push the migrant off the back. If they're not rescued, they are going to die. We're locked arms. You're not getting by us. It's entirely possible we break the record this year.
I did not know we were going to see this today. Hey, I'm Allie Bradley with NewsNation. We are out here with CBP's Air and Marine Operations out in San Diego to look at how they're dealing with smuggling incidents and how they're interdicting these boats that are coming towards shore so they can stop them before they even make landfall.
So currently we have 2 Black Hawks in San Diego.
How cool.
We have hoist rescue specialists that can hoist down, put the migrant in a special device or even a basket if necessary. We can hoist them up, get them to a hospital. We can land that helicopter on some hospital helipads. Here it comes again.
That's impressive. So now, do they all have to have the same training on those? Like, do all of them have to have that kind of like EMT certification side of things, or is one person on that? They have that capability. You've got the pilot. You've got, like, how does that work on a Black Hawk? Because I know normally you can fit a bunch of people on there, right? But how many do they normally fly with? 4?
Normally 3 to 4. In most cases, we have emergency medical technicians qualified as crew members. In some cases, we have hoist, hearst, air crew riflemen, all that.
So this is a Black Hawk. We just heard the chief talking about how it's essentially the Swiss Army knife for CBP air and marine operations. They can do reconnaissance missions, they can do rescue missions, they can help with these interdictions. Right now they're doing these high-speed, low passes, showing us really what their capabilities are, and it's really impressive. They operate with about 3 or 4 individuals on board. A lot of times they can help with a migrant who needs rescuing. They can help with these drug interdictions, different things out here on the open water. So you just saw kind of just a little taste of what those Black Hawks can do. An interdiction scenario that played out, that went pretty viral, is actually some of our crew that's on the boat right now was involved in that, and it had his first, what you guys call an engine shootout. Tell me what happened in that incident and how it kind of came to play.
Yeah, on that particular day recently, Enrique was underway with his supervisor, a pretty experienced crew. And it happened that they were doing a southbound pursuit. We believe, investigation is still pending, but we believe that the smuggler already dropped off migrants and we just kind of missed them. They were heading southbound toward the maritime boundary line, and Enrique and his crew established the pursuit for quite a while, relatively fast speeds, and then the decision was made to pursue SBIP, Small Interdiction Program, Small Boat Interdiction Program. And they initiated SBIP, they did warning shots, and what was unique on this particular one was the vessel was an inboard-outboard. So normally we see outboard engines that are a little bit easier to identify where to shoot. You shoot where the cowling, where you think the cylinders are to disable the vessel. In this case, he shot to disable the outdrive, which is a smaller target at and below the water level. And he nailed it, disabled the vessel, arrested the smuggler, pending charges.
And then already this fiscal year, you guys are at 14 for this unit alone?
For this unit alone, and they get a lot of SBIP, a lot of shoots in Puerto Rico, Miami as well, all over the country really, but Puerto Rico, Miami, and San Diego are the top 3, and I think we're number 1 by a factor of 2.
Oh wow, we're numbers people, right? So if you got 14 this fiscal year already, we're in May. What is a normal year for you guys? Like, what is 14 big and small?
It's pretty big. It's been pretty active since January, so we've been getting quite a few shoots, small boat interdiction program shoots. But when it was very active in previous years, I don't think it was unusual to get 15 to 20 in a year.
So you're already at what you would almost have for an entire year, and you still got a few months, several months
remaining for the fiscal year. Yeah. So,
right.
It's entirely possible we break the record this year.
Statistically, what are we seeing for the vessels that will stop?
So it's daytime, nighttime. It's different. They're a little more brazen at night, but at nighttime, usually 50% or more will stop when they see our lights and sirens. In some cases, even the smugglers get a little startled when we're that close at night, pitch black. We hit those lights and sirens. Even they get kind of scared.
So wait, you have like a stealth mode?
No, but at night they can't see us.
Oh, wow.
We generally come in right behind them. In some cases, our agents are on night vision goggles. In many cases, we're being vectored by
then you're using the FLIR too, right?
In some cases, while you're going fast and getting into interdict, the FLIR is a little bit tough. But when we're being vectored by our aircraft, that vessel doesn't know the aircraft is there. The aircraft knows exactly where they are. So they're vectoring us into that target. So in many cases, we pull up alongside or right behind them and kick on our lights, and they haven't seen another thing for hours. And in many cases, they're doing 20, 25, 30 knots, blasting through 3-foot seas. They're beat up, they're tired, they're exhausted. We hit those lights and we scare them. And in a lot of cases, we scare the smuggler too, because they have no idea that we're there. So at night, 50% or so will stop as soon as we get the lights and sirens on. Another percentage will stop as soon as they see our warning rounds, because they know that we're serious and we're not playing games. And if they don't, these guys are so professional, they transition into the small boat interdiction program immediately. And they can shoot out those engines in seconds, not minutes. And then the game is over. Now it's all about containing all of the people on the other vessel, making sure you see their hands for officer safety. And again, that's the point at which it can go a plethora of different places, right? If they're smuggling drugs and they could be carrying guns, now you've got a serious problem that you need to address quickly with force, with overwhelming force. And in other cases, you've got 14 scared, dehydrated, hypothermic migrants, and now you're transitioning into rescue operations immediately.
So daytime, statistically, what are we looking at? 50-50 at night? Daytime, how many stop?
Probably 25% will stop. We're just a little less brazen during the day. In some cases, they'll see us coming.
So 25% will stop or won't stop? Won't.
25% won't stop.
Okay.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
25% won't stop. Very rarely, when you're dealing with arrests and pursuits and firearms level of force, very rarely do you have 100% safety record. In this case, we do. There's 350 plus engine shoots all over the country since we've been keeping track, and in not one case has any occupant of the vessel ever been injured.
That's very impressive.
We have cameras up and down the coast that, between Border Patrol, Coast Guard, Air and Marine, and others, that we share all those feeds and we share all that data. But there's state, local, and other are funding some cameras and systems like that. And generally speaking, we're not able to share information. We don't generally share information with state, local, because of State Bill 54 in California that prevents them from working migrant cases with us. I mean, we work very well with our state and local partners on drug cases, particularly fentanyl. We've had several operations in the last year, including Apollo and others, where we use Stone Garden funding to fund our state and local partners that are working with us extensively to combat fentanyl.
They can bring in additional resources to do that.
Yeah, and they're already doing that work. So the more that we can work together, share information. If we've got information on a particular plaza boss or a particular drug trafficking organization that we can share with our partners, they may have similar information, and it can help us tie those knots, get those things together, and get closer to arrest sooner.
So what's the working relationship like with Mexico? Because I mean, this is a little bit of my ignorance. I don't work this side of the country very often. They're obvious. I mean, I'm assuming they're coming out of Mexico and kind of circumventing, right, coming up and coming shoreside, right? Like they're not, because they're not walking across the land border, but they are coming from Mexico, right? For the most part, these vessels.
Exclusively from
Okay.
Mexico, yeah.
Okay, so what's Mexico doing to stop it, or what's the relationship like that with that?
So I was in Ensenada a few months ago, and I met with the Vice Admiral in charge of the Baja Mexico CMAR, which is in the Mexican Navy. We had a great interaction. We had lunch, we had briefings on their customs procedures and their search and rescue and interdiction capabilities. And we are at the stage where we're really trying to get more information exchange, because they're asset limited. They have limited interceptors, limited capacity other than search and rescue. They actually have pretty extensive and capable search and rescue program in Ensenada. What they lack are those offshore interdiction platforms. But they have information. They have, information that they can share with us. So we're trying to work together on getting that information to us that we can action it, put an aircraft overhead, detect a particular smuggling conveyance, and then with that aircraft, we can get Coast Guard, we can get Air and Marine, we can get somebody out in front of it to interdict it.
Are they helpful and receptive, or is it kind of more of a pulling teeth situation? Because Mexico's been hit and miss for the last 4 years.
Nah, so they've been a good partner to Air and Marine San Diego for years. And in fact, where we interdict a vessel, here the prevailing current is southbound. So if we have a disabled vessel with 14 aliens on board, they're in a perilous situation. If they're not rescued, they are going to die, because they're just going to keep going south and out to sea. So we work with our partners in Mexico. They send out search and rescue teams to rescue those people and take them back to Mexico. So when they're disabled, Mexico is quite responsive, because search and rescue is all of our responsibility, right? Now, when it comes to interdiction, we have had cases where they've come out and we've vectored Mexican interdiction assets to interdict a particular smuggling conveyance. But again, they have a little bit more limitations equipment-wise. I've got several coastal interceptor vessels, and if our crews aren't in the best position, I got a bunch of friends on Coast Guard vessels that we can call them on the radio. In San Diego, we operate uniquely. We operate off of one radio frequency. The Coast Guard, Border Patrol, Air and Marine, Office of Field Operations, Homeland Security Investigations, we're all operating on the same frequency. So when my aircraft identifies a smuggling conveyance, everybody knows it immediately. And we start triaging, figuring out which asset is most capable, which asset has the best proximity, and we all get on a conference call every time, and we talk about which one would be best to interdict this particular vessel. In the case of, there was a case just a few nights ago where we had a jet ski come across that we thought was transporting migrants. So we got on the radio and we asked Coast Guard, hey, clear out. I've got Border Patrol already staged, ready to interdict this when it hits shore. So you guys back up, let us get this one at shore. Because sometimes when we get it at shore, we get pickup activity, we get pickup drivers, which gives us more intelligence, more arrest, more 1324 prosecutions potentially. So those are valuable endeavors when we can pull those off. And in
so it's kind of like when you're Arizona, Texas, where they get smuggling vehicles. It's almost like you want to wait for them to pick up, or wait for them to be in a position where you can bring those charges forward and have that proof or kind of that connection, because otherwise they're just a truck sitting there kind of thing, right?
We definitely do that to the extent that we can safely, and that's the key, because particularly with jet skis, what we've seen is if we chase a jet ski, the first thing the smuggler is going to do is push the migrant off the back. So now we've got a migrant in the water. So listen, you could be a kilo of cocaine, a pound of methanol, a pound of meth, a pound of fentanyl, or a migrant. You're just a commodity to these smugglers. They don't care. So they'll just push the migrant off the back, and now we're doing a rescue. And that's what makes this job so unique for the mariners you've met today, is when they roll behind, let's say our aircraft detects a vessel and it's a cuddy cabinet and we don't really know what's going on with it. We just know that it's in a weird place doing a weird thing. It's suspicious. When our mariners pull up on that, it can be drug runners, armed drug runners, and it turns into a firefight. It could be 15 migrants that are dehydrated, that have fuel burns on their rump because they've been sitting in cold water with fuel burns. It could be dehydrated migrants. Worse than that, it could be a vessel that's sinking. And now, which happened I think 2 or 3 months ago, you're pulling out 10 or 15 migrants out of 55-degree water, all hypothermic, dangerous situation. These guys don't know what they're running into until they're alongside. And they have to put on the law enforcement hat when it's drug runners, where you've got M4s trained on them, ready to take care of business. And then in a moment, you're like, okay, it's migrants, let's put that one down and let's make sure the situation is safe. And just moments after that, you might be pulling a dehydrated and hypothermic migrant out of the water. And now you're performing life-saving field medical on this person. That can happen all in one. It's crazy, and that's why these guys are some of the highest trained, the best trained mariners in the world.
You work patrolling the maritime parts of the border here. What have you seen as far as human smuggling on the water? Have we seen it becoming more aggressive? Have we seen it tick up more now that the southern border is secure? What are you seeing here?
So what we're seeing in San Diego sector specifically, and it's important to keep in mind that San Diego sector, although we only have 60 land miles of border with Mexico that we're responsible for, we are responsible for the entire coast of California. So what we've seen here in San Diego sector historically is literally hundreds of these maritime events over the years. Most important to note, in 2023, we recorded more than 700 of these maritime events. This fiscal year, we're right around 300. So we're kind of on the same trend, if you would say. Even though we are fortifying the land border, we are still seeing these maritime human smuggling events, which are very dangerous. Like we saw just over a week ago, 3 people died in one of these events. We have to also remember the event that happened in May of 2023, where 8 people died. So this is just constant reminder that these smuggling events are dangerous. These human smugglers are putting people's lives at risk, and they have no regard for their well-being.
Now, I know that you have kind of force multipliers down here right now. You have a lot of different agencies that you guys are working hand in glove with right now to secure the border and secure these areas. But the cartel is still making their money, right? They're still kind of fooling these people into coming. What is the danger there for these people that are trusting the smugglers, that are still taking the journey, and they're doing it by sea and not necessarily by land anymore?
So we've seen this trend over the years, where the human smugglers will utilize the maritime front, but it's very dangerous, as we know.
So when it comes to that, I mean, how are they selling it to these migrants, right? I mean, hey, come on in, it's safe, we'll get you there, 100%, no problem. Pay us, we got you, because there's a lot of eyes on the land border right now. I mean, what are you guys learning from the individuals that you intercept, from your interviews, from things like that with the maritime smuggling?
Well,
what are they being told?
Well, what we gathered over the years through interviews and really working this whole region is that we know that these human smugglers lie to people. They will all guarantee them entry. They're charging them extreme amounts of money to come into the United States illegally this way. So we've learned that they lie to them. They're deceitful. And really, people should understand that this route is not a legitimate route, for one. People should turn themselves over to the port of entry for legal entry into the United States. They shouldn't be utilizing a criminal organization who really have no regard for their well-being.
Now, when it comes to the success and the force multipliers that you guys do have down here, have they been helpful? Has it been helpful to have DOD down here, to have all these different agencies working together? Has anyone been stepping on top of each other? Have you all kind of figured out a way to navigate all these partnerships?
Well, we always work well with either our state, local, or federal partners, and DOD is a testament to that. Their continued help with fortifying the infrastructure, also filling in with other logistical and surveillance positions that were once held by Border Patrol agents. Now DOD can kind of fill those spots, allowing agents to go to the front lines, and the front line being here along the maritime front.
Now, I mean, you guys are looking at having to hire 20,000 some odd agents. I mean, the bush hires are getting retired, right? Do you guys need the force down here when the numbers have completely plummeted? I mean, we're looking at under 300 on average across the whole SWV, man. So do you need those agents? What do you think from where you stand?
So the short answer is going to be yes. The fact that our numbers there's an extreme downward trend of the apprehensions. So take this time last year where we were apprehending right here in San Diego sector around 1,500 to 2,000 people a day. And that's apprehending, transporting, and processing, and then out processing those folks. Nowadays, it's right around 30 to 40 people. So the numbers are drastically down compared to last year. We're always going to need border security. As we know, border security is national security, and we're going to remain vigilant along our borders.
So maritime smuggling, when it comes to that issue, if you were to meet a migrant tomorrow who is about to board one of these boats with the cartel, what do you tell them?
Don't do it. They're going to be lied to. They're going to be misled. They will put their lives in danger if they engage with this criminal organization. They will pay a high fee. And let's also keep in mind, there's been many times we've interviewed migrants after the fact, after we've arrested them on the maritime front, and they've explained to us, well, they haven't paid yet. They're intending to pay the criminal organization a fee. So what does that kind of lead into? It leads into a whole lot of other issues that will definitely be investigated. But the short message is don't do it. You need to go to a port of entry, and that is the only legal route to enter the United States.
We learned yesterday about $18,000 was kind of the going rate on average for an individual to come by sea. Is that what you've learned to be consistent as well recently?
That's about average of what we've kind of learned over the years, and consistently currently with the maritime events. Yes,
that seems insane.
It is. It's a high.
I thought 15,000 was a lot.
Right, and let's also keep in mind in the past 2 to 3 years. I mean, we were encountering people from all over the world. When we interview people from different parts of the world, not even from the Western Hemisphere, they're paying upwards of 20 or 25,000. So really, that's another example of how these criminal organizations exploit people. Technology, as it evolves over time, cell phones and social media, as it will be. But really, this has been happening for years. So what we need to explain to people is that the entire coast of California is a border. Oftentimes people will say, hey, you're not at the border. Well, I would encourage people to look left, look west, and there's a border there. The entire coast of California is indeed a border.
And you guys being able to not be transporting and processing 1,500 people a day allows you to go back to the job that you originally had signed up to keep people safe and stop the individuals who don't want to be caught.
Last 2 or 3 years, it was a task that we necessarily didn't ask for, but it was a task that we faced, and we answered those calls greatly. I think the Border Patrol, especially here in San Diego, did a tremendous job, and we're continuing to do a tremendous job in providing border security for this nation. For people along the coastline here in San Diego, it goes back to the old saying, if you see something, say something. If you see anything suspicious, an abandoned boat, life jackets, something as simple as footprints across an area where you wouldn't necessarily see footprints, maybe in a parking lot, something like that, to call Border Patrol, and we can definitely come and answer those calls. So our technology is a great tool that we have here in San Diego sector. So a lot of surveillance technology, agents themselves, vehicles, I mean, all that comes into play in trying to combat these maritime smuggling events.
But you have to have the whole tool belt, right? You can't just have the nail and not the hammer, or you can't have a camera but no agent to respond to the camera. So now you're able to do the job that you guys signed up for. That's why Border Patrol's been around for 100 years.
Exactly. We just recently, celebrated our 100 years of existence. And that, to answer your question, yes, we're going to need all elements to come into play. Our border infrastructure, the agents themselves, technology, everything working in collaboration to provide border security.
We've talked about the partnerships, how you guys work in collaboration. What does the collaboration look like with AMO? What does it look like when a vessel is being kind of interdicted? And how do you guys work together to not only keep everyone safe, but also to prevent that situation from being successful on the smuggler's end?
Well, our collaboration with Air Marine Operations, AMO, is tremendous. They're our sister agency within CBP, and we work with them every single day. So the men and women who operate the boats and the aircraft within San Diego sector, they're a tremendous asset for us. So when immediate maritime event happens, we're able to work on the same radio frequencies. They know the common landmarks, and we work very well within San Diego sector.
We just wrapped up our ride along with Customs and Border Protection air and marine operation agents who were showing us exactly how they operate out in pretty much the open water. So talking about interdiction, talking about human smuggling, and also talking about how they do it safely. They have a track record where in 350 different incidents where they've actually had to shoot out engines of these smuggling vehicles, they haven't had anyone injured in those incidents. So we learned a lot of different information from these guys on this boat. But one of the biggest things that we took away is the training and the responsibility that they have to keep everyone involved safe. Hey, I'm Allie Bradley, and we were able to talk with Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks at 100 days under DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. What's been working? What does he think needs to change, or what kind of resources do they currently need? Well, in the interview with the chief, we learn how they're going to be expanding some of these national defense areas, providing more opportunity for military to be involved. We also talked with the chief about his feelings on going over to Mexico and military forces being utilized over there to combat the criminal cartels. Here's that conversation. All right, Chief Mike Banks jumping in here, talking about the first 100 days with Kristi Noem as DHS Secretary, obviously a new role for her. Let's start right there. What has been the most notable for you from where you sit as the Chief of Border Patrol under DHS Secretary Kristi Noem?
Well, I think the most notable is having a DHS secretary who actually understands what's going on the border and supports the men and women of not just the Border Patrol, but CBP as a whole. I have seen Secretary Noem, or have been side by side with Secretary Noem on the border more times in the first 100 days than the previous administration, the entire previous administration, spent on the border during its entire 4 years. She's down there, she's listening, she's seeing what's going on, and she's empowering the men and women of CBP to get the job done.
Now, Chief, when it comes to the messaging, obviously with Kristi Noem out in front at the forefront, Tom Homan out at the forefront, you as well, boots on the ground in every one of these kind of interactions with law enforcement down here on the border. How important is that messaging? You kind of just juxtaposed under the Biden administration kind of the lack of presence down here at the border. How important is that messaging for all of you guys to be boots on the ground, but also how important is that messaging to carrying out your mission where the president wants 0 people entering the country illegally?
So the messaging is of the utmost importance, and it's not just messaging, but it's the proper messaging. It's letting the world know that our borders are closed and you're not going to come here illegally. If you want to immigrate to this country, you need to go through a port of entry and do it the proper way. We're a welcoming country, but you've got to apply under the laws. And so I think messaging is just key and instrumental to us, because as you mentioned or alluded to earlier, the previous administration not only messaged that the border was open, but they went into 2 countries and said, hey, come to the border. Hey, apply for this. Hey, apply to the CBP One app. Where, and of course, surprise, surprise, the borders are open. Leadership is telling the world that the borders are open, and we had people from all over the world show up. But when you've got a secretary like Secretary Noem who's getting out ahead of the messaging and making sure they understand, don't put your life in danger, don't make this dangerous journey, because if you come, you're going to be apprehended, you're going to be prosecuted, and you're going to be deported. And so, once you message that there's consequences, and then we deliver those consequences by apprehending, the DOJ delivers by prosecuting, and then ICE delivers by deportation. All that messaging plus the consequences combined send a clear message that we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And so it starts with the messaging. If you message that there's no consequences for breaking the law, people are going to break the law. So we start with messaging, and it's been phenomenal. We are seeing not only a 95% decrease in cross-border traffic, but we've seen a 99% decrease in the Darien Gap. And from reporting on this over the last 4 years, Allie, that we gauge what's going to show up at our border by what's crossing in the Darien Gap. 99% decrease in the Darien Gap, because the messaging is getting out and it's clear. Don't put yourself in danger. Don't risk your life. Don't subject your children to the harsh treatments that they would receive crossing the border. And the messaging's working.
Right, don't waste your money just to be turned around, right? And with that being said, Chief, what are we seeing notices to appear? Are we having people come in, released into the country right now? What is the processing? Say somebody from Mexico comes across the border right now illegally, what happens? And then let's say someone from Venezuela crosses the border illegally right now. What's happening to those two individuals during your term as chief and under the Trump administration right now?
So I'm proud to say that since President Trump took office and under the leadership of Secretary Noem, the United States Border Patrol has had 9 releases under a own recognizance in that first 100 days. I want to be very clear, 4 of those 9 releases were for material witnesses. Those are someone that served as a witness for the government in a case against someone else. 2 of those 4 have already appeared, given their witness statements in court, and have since been deported. 3 of the 9 were for serious medical issues, and they were temporarily released to get that medical attention. We will be deporting them once they're medically cleared to be returned to their country. Now, back to your question about Mexican nationals. If a Mexican national crosses and they're deportable, they're arrested, they're either prosecuted, depending on the crime, and then they're returned. But when they're returned, they're not returned right back across the border. They're returned deeper into southern Mexico so that they can't just turn around and create that recidivism problem and cross again. As far as Venezuela, Venezuela is now taking its citizens back, and so they will be held, they will be detained, prosecuted, and deported back to Venezuela.
Are there additional charges or more criminal infractions that are coming with someone entering the country illegally right now? Are they being detained and serving jail time here, or is that for if they re-enter illegally what they would face?
So it all depends on the crime. If this is their first time entering the country, they will serve time for illegally entering the country. Upon release from custody for serving that time that they're prosecuted for the illegal entry, they'll then be returned to their country. Now, if they commit any other crimes in that process between the time that they enter the country illegally and the time they're apprehended, they're absolutely prosecuted for any and all crimes that are applicable to the violations they committed. They will serve that time, at which time we'll pick them back up and we will send them out for deportation back to the country of their citizenship. And so, again, it just depends on, but we are prosecuting for every crime. Right now we have an over 93% prosecution rate, meaning 93% of the people that we are apprehending are being prosecuted for violating one or multiple crimes.
What is that compared to the Biden administration? What were we seeing under them?
Phenomenal. To get a prosecution under the previous administration, it was absurd. You have to remember, Ali, and I know you've seen it from all the time you spent on the border. We were releasing people. We had no idea what crimes they committed. They weren't even being vetted, and then we're later finding things, like murders and robbery and assault on police officers in places like New York City. Those days are over. Secretary Noem on day one made it very clear the days of catch and release are over. There will be consequences for crossing the border illegally. If you look at President Trump signed the Lincoln-Riley Act, the Lincoln-Riley Act, and you've got us enforcing that, and that says that if you have any type of known violent criminal behavior, right, that you absolutely would not be released. And to be clear, it's not just the Lincoln-Riley Act, but we are pulling out all the stops. If you look at areas that we've now declared the NDA, the National Defense Area, where it has turned into a military training facility, people are being prosecuted for Title 50, which is trespassing on a military installation, in addition to being prosecuted for illegal entry into the United States. And so we've made it very clear. If you look at our coast, we knew that as we started squeezing that balloon along the southern border, that traffic was going to push to the coast. And we've got Secretary Noem has the Coast Guard out there patrolling our coast. In the first 100 days, we've seized over 250,000 pounds of hard narcotics that would have gone to the streets of America if it wouldn't have been for the leadership of Secretary Noem. And so we continue to push. We plan for it. We expect it. We've got, 3,000 Texas National Guard that have been deputized under the authority granted to us by Secretary Noem. We've got DEA, we've got Marshals, we've got ATF. If you are a law enforcement agency in the federal government of the United States, you have been brought into this fight against illegal immigration into this country, and everyone is out there fighting it every day, and that's why we're seeing the record lows that we're seeing, because we've made it a whole of government approach. I've heard the term whole of government approach my entire life, Ali. for the first time in my career, I'm seeing it brought to fruition. We are bringing a whole of government approach to fighting this illegal immigration and this narcotic smuggling, and we're seeing massive gains in it, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, and the post office is even involved now at this point. So really interesting to see that whole of government approach in action. And with that said, Chief, you talk about the hard narcotics that have been seized. We've seen a pretty substantial decrease in fentanyl. Where is the fentanyl going? Is it already here? DEA says the cartel is present in all 50 states. Most people don't believe that the cartel just gave up on fentanyl, but they also know they were killing people, killing their customers. What's going on with the fentanyl and the cartels, and how is Mexico's kind of response impacting the United States?
So actually, Mexico to some extent has been very responsive. They've sent over 10,000 Guardia Nacional, which is the equivalent of the U.S. National Guard for Mexico, to their northern border to help interdict that and prevent it from even making it to their northern border or our southern border. But what you're starting to see is, look, the cartel's not going to pack up and go home. So what the cartel's going to do is they're going to infight to try to take over area, because they need more area now to try to push their narcotics through. The expectation is that as their properties, if you will, as they start taking over certain areas, then we look for them to try to regroup and make their push north. We're also starting to see that Mexico is branching out away from the United States and are pushing their fentanyl into other countries like Canada. They're pushing their fentanyl into South and Central America. They're pushing their fentanyl into Europe. And so we're seeing a turn in the hard narcotics. Instead of being pushed north into the United States, they're looking for new markets, because we're closing the market on the United States.
Wow. And like we saw at the end of Title 42, right? They have to pivot. They might be doing this infighting to gain territory. It takes some time to get there. So that might be why we're kind of seeing a little bit of a lull. But you talk about those NDAs. There are now two. There's one in the New Mexico area, right? And then there's one in El Paso. Those are the two, I believe?
Correct. And combined, it's about 170 miles. One of the areas is annexed to Fort Bliss. The other is annexed to Fort Huachuca. And we're seeing great successes in that. Again, it's one more way to offer another consequence for entering the country illegally. It also unties the hands of our partners that are out there assisting us. And as we're seeing the successes in these NDAs, we expect to continue growing those NDA areas.
So we can expect to see those expand. Should we? And what is your support? Where does it lie on having U.S. troops combating the cartels? We just heard President Trump talking to one of my colleagues about how the Mexico president basically said, nope, we're not allowing that to happen. But Trump is essentially saying it needs to happen. There's not enough happening on the south side of the border. The U.S. troops need to go in here and handle the cartels. Do you believe that needs to happen? Would you support that? And would you support Border Patrol getting involved in some capacity?
So I don't want to get out over my skis and speaking ahead of the president or the head of Department of Defense, but what I can tell you from the U.S. Border Patrol perspective is the previous administration, the Biden administration, decimated the ranks, the morale, and the resources and capabilities of the United States Border Patrol. So we welcome and encourage anyone out there, law enforcement, DOD, National Guard, to come help us fight this fight. And they are. We are bringing everything but the kitchen sink at them. And so we absolutely need those resources, and we continue to need those resources until such time that the Border Patrol can rebuild its manpower, its resources, and its infrastructure. And we're expecting to get, some funding from, the Senate and the Hill, as well as the president here very shortly, which will help us shore up some of those defenses. But we absolutely need the Department of Defense, along with all of our other law enforcement partners, to continue fighting this fight until we can get back to where we need to be.
Well, and Chief, obviously whatever happens in Mexico has a direct impact to you and the men and women that serve under you. So would you support that U.S. crossover? If it's, Border Patrol probably wouldn't even go because I don't know if they have that jurisdiction. But if they could stop the cartel, if the U.S. military forces could, wouldn't that be a benefit for Border Patrol? So would you want that to happen, or do you want to be more in a reactionary stance if the cartels surge over the border, or what does that look like? I know you don't want to speak ahead of the president.
I support anything that we can do legally that will shut down the border. and I'm here to support the president and the secretary and doing anything we can do within our legal powers to get that border shut down.
Is there concern that the violence from the cartel are going to escalate? We were down in the Rio Grande Valley, had some rocks hurled at us while we were out in the boat cruise. Is there concern that the cartel is going to be more violent, that they're going to use bomb-wielding drones on our side of the border? Are those concerns ramping up for you as a Border Patrol chief?
So I'm always concerned for my agents in the field. We're always prepared. Right now the cartel is infighting to try to figure out, what territories they can control. But as we've seen over and over again, we do expect that once they establish that level of control on the south side, that they could push forward. I can tell you this, the United States Border Patrol is not only concerned, but we're prepared. We train, we're well trained, we're one of the most professional law enforcement agencies in the United States, and we're actually prepared to meet that and stand up to that. We will not back down from the cartel. We will not back down from anyone. Our mission is to secure that border, and we're going to get it secure.
All right, we'll see you when zero crossings happen, boss. I appreciate you. So when it comes to the criminal cartels, that's the #1 target down here. They're trying to move people into the country illegally, trying to move drugs into the country illegally. And the Border Patrol chief says they're not going to back down. They're not going to back down to the cartel. They're not going to back down to anybody when it comes to securing the border. And he says that is the mission. The mission didn't change, and they will secure the border.